All righty, fantastic. Good morning, team. Welcome to the Standard Podcast, where we raise the bar, rebuild the culture, and call out the lies or misconceptions that nobody else will. This isn't motivation. This is a movement. I'm Thomas Rowe, joined by my host, Aaron Charles, and today we're sitting down with who has quickly become a friend of ours. We met like so many of the other clients that we do. There's so many other people we meet on LinkedIn. Shauna Griffiths, who's become a really close friend, and we off camera were just talking about March Madness. Shauna is a strategic partner who works with founders, executives, and leadership teams navigating high-stakes moments revolving around growth, pivots, launches, and inflection points. With nearly 20 years of experience across both client-side and agency environments, Shauna helps teams cut through noise, clarify priorities, and move from strategy to action with speed and focus. She advises on revenue growth, go-to-market strategy, strategic alliance, and investment readiness. But here's what makes Shauna different. She believes leadership is a sport. As a two-sport athlete, undergrad at Michigan, she played basketball, and working on her master's at Eastern Michigan, she was in track and field and cross country. So she truly does understand what sport and leadership is all about. The most effective leaders treat their craft the way athletes treat training, with intention, discipline, and commitment to continuous improvement. She calls these leadership athletes, people who are actively training to maximize their contribution and impact. Again, a former two-sport Division I collegiate athlete, MBA holder, and strategic advisor recognized as a 2017 game changer by Sports Business Journal, Shauna brings an athlete mindset to business strategy and leadership development. We're diving into truth, what it really takes to build identity, discipline, and legacy in sports and in life. Let's get into it. As a matter of fact, that's the end of the podcast. Shauna is amazing. You guys don't know anything else, reach out to Shauna. Shauna, thank you so much for joining us on this Magic Monday. We really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on board.
Yeah, thank you. It is truly an honor. I've been just so glad to get to know you both and, share so many of the same beliefs and, your commitment to helping and being a part of the solution, the movement forward. It really resonates with me, and I appreciate the opportunity and your friendship.
Awesome. We're excited. So let's get into it. You work with founders and executives navigating high stakes moments, growth, pivots, launches, inflection points. You help them cut through the noise and move from strategy to action with speed and focus. What does raising the standard mean to you in the workplace as well as in athletics?
So raising the standard, it truly is a mindset, right? And Yep. I believe so fully that our job as leaders is to work to be better than ever yesterday. So it is a constant effort, a conscious effort to continuously raise your own standards. It's
Right.
What will I and will I not tolerate for the way I think about myself, my self-talk, because it starts within ourselves. A lot of times I think leaders and leadership is thought to be about leading other people. And I do this because one of my college coaches said, when you point the finger at others, you've got three pointing back at you. And I always remember that. And, it really is true. So if we're wanting to raise the standard, and that's the way you can pursue excellence. It's not achieve excellence in my belief system. It's about the continual pursuit of improvement. This is also not about perfection, right? Excellence. Sometimes people think, that you have to reach the top. You have to be the most excellent. It's all about perfection. It's not. We're not perfect. That's not the goal. The goal is to continue to, as I often say, evolve into who we're meant to be. But that takes learning, growth, and evolution along the way.
Perfect. Well said. And what would you say is the biggest lie you feel the culture of business or athletics has given business people and athletes to navigate growth and build successful companies or a strong culture in a team?
I think it comes back to this interesting thing where people think it's all about me.
Right.
Again, the element of your ability to lead yourself first If you can lead yourself effectively, then you and continue to learn, grow, and evolve, then you can lead others that way too, and you can lead the business that way. And too many times people think it's all about me. And this game, this sport of, as you know, as we talk about the sport of leadership, and my role as a leadership athlete is not about myself.
Right.
It is about my growth, my ability to lead others, to lead myself and then lead others. And because it is a team environment, the business is a team environment. And, so I think that is where a lot of people get blinded by their own ego, by their own definition of, again, perfection. It's all about me.
Right.
Again, that's the point fingers at others, point back at yourself type thing. So I think that's where a lot of people can tend to get off the rails a bit is
Sure.
that you sit in a seat of leadership. That does not mean that you do not have all the say, you do not have all the power, you do not abuse that power. Again, when you're sitting in that seat, it is an honor, and there are responsibility and accountability that comes along with that. So I think those things are what I encourage people who take that seat to have that mindset. So again, it's not all about me. I just arrived and now I'm here. I'm going to tell everybody else what to do. So.
Gotcha. And you believe leadership is a sport and call the most effective leaders, quote, leadership athletes, which I think is badass. As a former two-sport Division I athlete, how did your athletic background shape your understanding of what high-performance leadership really looks like?
Well, when you're on this journey as an athlete coming up, there is an acceptance of an acceptable amount of, call it suffering, or an acceptable amount of discomfort, maybe another thing. And so I think that is an understanding as you go forward in your career, in your life. It is not always going to feel great.
Right.
There are learning curves that happen in life and in business. A lot of times people will, again, get a high stakes role and they think, oh, it's going to be so great and easy when I get there, or I'm going to know exactly what to do, or at least I'll have, total confidence when I'm there. The reality is once you get that seat, like it's kind of like the game clock begins and the work you put in. And it's not about, again, looking at everybody else, telling them what to do and how they're doing the work. There's a learning curve there.
Yeah.
So I think that I took that, again, that ability to work on myself, work on my own game, right? Because I'm constantly trying to be better. You're going to practice every day these fundamentals. And I'm speaking sports language, but at the same time as I'm saying it, if you think about the role in a role in business, you're doing the same thing. So what are you practicing every day? What is your self-talk because you're coaching yourself first, right?
Yep.
So what is your self-talk? What are the actions that you're taking? But before you even get to the actions, what are you willing to do? How are you willing to push yourself to up your game? That is a level of self-awareness of, what am I doing that's working effectively? What am I not doing that's working effectively?
Right.
What am I consuming, right? So in sports, you talk about fueling yourself and you're getting coaching from others. In business, as a leadership athlete, what are you consuming? It might be the food, but also what content are you consuming? Are we
Right.
doom scrolling? Are we substituting those behaviors with something else? Do I have a coach? And I think that, I've had a coach, he's incredible, Leslie Harris, worked with him for over 10 years. I've done a lot of coaching for people, whether you call it coaching or advising. When you're in a leadership role, I truly believe in that continued feedback system, that continued commitment to growing yourself and figuring out how you're going to level up. But to your point earlier, how are you going to continue to pursue excellence? So these are things that I believe in strategically putting in your path to keep you as a leadership athlete in this sport of leadership, growing and staying towards the top of your game to the best of your ability.
No doubt. One of the things to build on that, one of the things Aaron and I emphasize with the athletes and the families that we work with, that every team has a captain, but we also tell our athletes, just because you're a captain doesn't mean you can't be a leader. right?
Mm.
I mean, you have to lead by example. And then how that translates into the workplace is you continue to be a leader. Obviously, you have your boss, you have your colleagues, but you don't want to step on anybody's shadow, but you also want to lead out front regardless. I'm going to turn it over to Erin, which is segment 2, which is identity and legacy. Erin, take it away.
Hi, Shauna. We're so
Hello.
excited to have you on.
Thank you.
I want to know who Shauna is beyond all the accolades that we heard about at the very beginning. This is you just get to tell us who you are.
Who am I? Goodness gracious. I'll say I'm a leadership athlete. That means that in the game of life, in the game of business, in the game of friendship, I want to continue to work on these things. I believe so much in learning, growing, evolving for myself in my life. And I literally have on one of my tattoos, evolving is on my arm tattooed, because it just actually represents who I am, right? And so things I love to do. I love to ride bikes. We've talked about that before. So I do a lot of cycling. I do it for mind, body, let's call it fitness, right? If friendships and connections mean a lot to me. So I've never been the person who has a gaggle of friends or who lives around a lot of people who are my friends. And so, maintaining friendships in person or, distance is important to me. Curiosity, continuing to learn things. Like I replaced my doom scrollings in the morning with my Duolingo Spanish. So I'm constantly learning there. So, the stuff I talk about is authentically. I don't think there's a version of Shauna that shows up at work that isn't really also showing up in life. That's just who I am and how I tick. So, sometimes I'll lean too far into, a workaholic type thing. But I think, again, it's foundational. It's just who I am authentically.
I love it. I think it's so important. I think sometimes, especially for the younger generation, is knowing that you being you is the most important thing. And it should translate in all aspects. I think early on in my career, it was like, okay, who's Erin at the corporate office versus who's Erin at home versus, and it's so hard to juggle if it's just like you're just yourself and showing up that way. Life becomes so much more manageable and easy because it's not like you're trying to wear a persona or do something different. And so I love that. And you're obviously very genuine. And I love that about you. So with that, you say that the most effective leaders treat their craft the way athletes treat training, with intention, discipline, and continuous improvement. What does legacy beyond business results, or even for the athletes beyond the game or the court, mean to you, especially as someone developing leadership athletes?
Somewhere along my life journey, I had this vision in my head, literally, of my desire in life to leave meaningful footprints on this earth. And I'm a very visual person, so I needed that visual, but it is a bit of a guidepost for me around how am I operating in my everyday, how am I treating myself, how am I treating others. So, I think that is part of me being authentic, is that commitment as well. And so, if I do show up, someone's going to feel, as you said, like they're going to feel a sense of genuine characteristic or quality in me. And so, again, I think that is how I can hopefully positively, create legacy, is just in when you have those type of interactions with people, then when they come away from that interaction with you, they feel filled up in some way. They can think of things, maybe they're inspired, or maybe they just shifted their perspective a little bit. It's not my job, I don't feel, and I don't think I'm some sort of martyr by like saving people and all that. That's nothing to do with it. But if I want to leave a legacy, it's a reflection of how I'm living my life, how my commitment to authenticity and like how that makes other people feel. And so because it's a little bit of that, it's that they can then hopefully go on and say, I'm not going to do it exactly like Shauna because that's authentic to Shauna, but they can look at it and say, well, what does this mean for me? And where can I find myself in something like this? Or how do I show up in that way that's authentic to me? So, I think that's what it is. It's not like it's not a specific destination. It's just, again, it's a consciousness around the quality of the footprints that I'm leaving in my daily life and in the work that I do.
I love that. I think, I don't know where I heard this, but I think sometimes we forget that being in our truth and being authentic to ourselves, which I think is the highest vibration frequency of energy that can exist, is us being who we are meant to be. We also then give people access to do the same just by being that way ourselves. And I think that that's so powerful. Sometimes you don't even have to do anything else other than just being you, which I love.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing that you said that. I think there is a sense of calm and like nervous system ease that happens when someone's truly being themselves. It's very different than when someone comes in and they're putting on airs, they may be acting fake. There's like almost this wall that comes up. And so I think when you're in communication with someone where there's this sense of ease because the person's just being themselves, at the same time, I think doing that with a sense of awareness, because I'm not saying be yourself and then you're doing damage to other people. It's like I am being me in a way that is not harming others. I am being me in a way that's actually thoughtful, that of the person I'm interacting with, of the space I'm interacting within. And I can actually be proud of who I am. I think that's an element of it. So part of what guides me every day is, can I look in the mirror and be proud of how I'm operating? Listen, I screw up. I make bad choices sometimes. I don't mean
We all do.
yeah,
Welcome to life.
it's not about perfection. It's about saying, well, you know what? Damn it. I look in the mirror and I say, I made a choice that perhaps hurt someone else. And then I say, well, what am I going to do about that differently? How am I going to show up differently? Yes, there's an element of, well, how do you almost, try to own up to and hold yourself accountable for operating that way? And then what are you going to do to operate differently as you go forward? That's where you can meet yourself where you are, be responsible in the way that you're being authentic, and then, keep yourself moving forward. To me, that's what the air quotes game is. That's a sport in and of itself, because it takes concentration, discipline, it takes coachability, right? It takes an element of resilience as well, because being able to get yourself back on track. It's funny. One of my coach, Leslie, has said to me countless times in my journey in business, through COVID layoff and tech downturn layoff and things happening to me that weren't great. He said, you know what, Shauna, you just got punched in the face, and nobody likes to get punched in the face, and it hurts and it stings, but you're not dead. Right. And so it's an interesting thing. Right. So that's where resilience, it's like, yep, I got to pick myself up, dust myself off, and keep myself moving forward. But in doing so, what are the key learnings? What are the takeaways that are going to help you learn to not get punched in the face, to get up more quickly less time, to meet that negative experience with more adaptability in the moment? So, for example, the first time I was laid off in COVID, oh my goodness, it was like a Mack truck hit me. It was very negatively impactful for me. But I got myself through it. So I proved myself to myself, right? So then the next time when I was laid off in the tech downturn, I was like, oh, I had a frame of reference to say, I've been there before. I've proved myself to myself. This has happened again, got punched in the face again. It didn't sting as bad that time. And I had reserves, I had evidence, I had tools in my toolbox, or, in my locker, call it, for the athletes who are listening, to be able to call on them. And it was like, oh, I had moves to know how to move myself forward. So again, these are all again, the language, to some people, it might sound cheesy. To me, it's just natural, right? So hopefully the people who are listening to this can take this, because of having that athletic mindset and athletic experience as a foundation, to see that it transfers. Here's the thing. When we are collegiate athletes, or whatever the highest level of athletics that you're playing, you're part of a team, right? When that ball stops bouncing, when the sport is over, we are often left feeling like the floor has dropped beneath us. And we look around and there's no coach and there's no team and those type of things. That is why it's so important to learn these things, these tools, these part of your foundation along the way, and not just waiting till you're done playing sports to figure out, well, how am I going to lead myself forward in life and in work? And I think sometimes people will think of their life as in just various seasons, and then they think, okay, well, my collegiate season is 4 years or it's 5 years, and then my post grad season is this, and it has this definitive time, and I'll learn these definitive things. What I encourage people to do is, if you want to think of your life in chunks to make it digestible for yourself, I totally get that. And not all seasons have the same time frame. Not all seasons have the same number of takeaways, life lessons, experiences. So a mindset around seasons and, again, evolution through the process is important, but the process is important. That's why people talk about the journey versus just the destination. So it's a different way. It's like a shifting of perspective to think about how you're going to navigate your journey forward that I like to draw upon and encourage other people to as well.
I love that. I love the self-leadership, and that's really what we came here to do, is really hone the art of who we are. And all these moments, whether it's leadership in the corporate setting, whether it's you're a current athlete, all of these moments are crafting you, teaching you, learning. And if you can learn the art of, what is this trying to teach me? What is this lesson that's here for me, versus pointing the fingers or going externally, but going internally and going, okay, where's the growth point here? How can I shift this? Because when you highlighted that example with, COVID, it's so powerful because you accessed the resources of what you'd already gone through. And so I think we all have that. We just have to access it. And I think that's so important. So what if there's one truth you wish every founder, executive, or emerging leader or athlete understood about leadership development and high performance that most are not hearing?
What is the one thing that I hope they are calling on that they're not already hearing? I think it is that their actions, their willingness to take action, all of those things have impact on themselves first and others, right? So things don't happen in isolation, and they don't need to put on airs. So kind of, draws on some of the things that we've talked about previously. But it is that through letting go of those things, I think, is where, it is attachment to those things. It is being transparent in the process. And I think all of those things wrapped up, I think, are really important for a person in that leadership seat to understand. And that if they do say something, people are going to notice. If they don't say something, people are going to notice. So how do you work with that over time? And you're in that seat, remember how visible it is, and remember the impact that you have on others. And so again, these are things that you can observe around you, but they start and end in here, inside. Again, it's the awareness of the impact that you're having every day. It's the awareness of the footprints that you're leaving. And that is not at the end. If you're talking about legacy, it's built every day. It's just like as an athlete, your ability to, we talked about March Madness earlier, your ability to play in the Big Ten championship and make it to the end, it doesn't happen overnight. Your ability to be the champion, raise that championship trophy, it's because of all the footsteps along the way. And so I think that is something that maybe people are, yeah, of course, but it's not think about it once or a couple times or in your annual reviews or something. It is an everyday conscious effort, which can seem overwhelming if you're hearing this for the first time or hadn't thought about it the first time. Like, Shauna, I don't have time to do this, that, and the other. I'm a mom, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's okay. That's why it's practice. That's why you do a little bit every day. And then after a while of practicing it, it becomes natural. You don't have to think about it as much, but you got to start today. if that's the journey that you want to be on.
I love that. So powerful. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Thomas. So he's going to take the next section.
Awesome, Shauna. We're going into segment 3, which is advice across all stages. So let's say if you had an opportunity to sit down with an executive or an athlete who's navigating their first major growth inflection point, what do they need to understand about treating leadership like a sport or as a sport?
I would literally ask them in that moment, how are you feeling right now? Check in with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Check in with your body. Check in, like, how are you? And being able to put words to it, and then being able to put where is this coming from? Again, it's this a bit of an exploration in that. So again, a lot of times what happened, it's a slow yourself down in that moment. When you get punched in the face and you want to freak out about it, you want to cry or run to someone and tell about the person who just punched you in the face. Again, I'm using the analogy we talked about earlier. What I often encourage is slow down for a second. Whoa, what just happened to me? How am I feeling? I'm feeling upset. I'm feeling embarrassed. Put some words to it. Where is this coming from? And then I think that, again, it's instead of reacting, it's pausing to assess. And then before taking action or reacting, before actually like following through on it, it's asking yourself, how do I handle this in this moment? How do I want to handle this?
Right.
And if we have choices, right? You get punched in the face, I can do a bunch of things. And you ask yourself, does it serve me to put my head down and cry for a week? Possibly. Does it serve me to go shit talk the person who just punched me in the face? Probably not. But then we can catch ourselves in the moment and start to make more decisions that serve us or serve others in a positive way. But it's always, does it serve me well in this moment to take this action? So that's the thing. And sometimes people say we have to slow down to be able to speed up. And that's in that moment where it's so important. Something really shitty happens, pause, collect yourself, investigate. And then move forward. The other thing I will say, you don't have to react. You don't have to say things. I think sometimes people think, oh my God, this just happened. I need to post about it on LinkedIn. I need to post about it on social media. Pause. Do you really want to do that? Do you need to make an announcement? Does that serve you to do that? So it's just, again, when we have these little tricks and things that we can ask ourselves, it's work in the beginning to remember. I literally encourage people to have little yellow stickies or whatever the color is that they keep around themselves to remind themselves. But after a while, you don't have to think about it as much, as I said earlier.
No doubt.
Something happens, it's a pause. It's think about a sport. It's a stutter step, whatever you want to say, but if you're reacting, you're usually not moving from a place of strength. You're moving from a place of, again, reactivity that gives use this word, but I don't mean it you're giving your power over to other people because you're just moving without thinking. So,
sure. Got it. So often, you're a perfect person to ask this question to, because a lot of leaders, a lot of executives, and a lot of athletes get caught in their head. So how would you advise an executive or an athlete who's trying to cut through the noise and clarify priorities in their business or the game in front of them? And how do you help them to get to that strategy to move to action with speed and focus?
Yeah, I think it's such a great point. We get trapped in our own mind, right?
Right.
And especially you can hear me say, well, of course, if you're telling us, Shauna, that it starts within us and that we have to look inside, that again is like internal in our brains. But you also heard me talk about having an advisor, having a coach, asking yourself these questions. And sometimes might sound a little schizophrenic, but it's asking yourself, Shauna, does that really serve you right now? Sometimes asking out loud, get outside of your own brain, have a thought partner. Have a thought partner who can also be a bit of a heart partner. So they're not going to give you the answers, right? But they're able to talk, be a sounding board.
Mhm.
And that does require a level of receptivity. So, and that's where coachability comes in. So
Right.
I had something just last week where it was a project for one of my clients right now, and a business client. We're working on a strategy, and there's a woman who I adore. I respect her. She's incredible at her craft. All the qualities. She's a leadership athlete. And I said, hey, can I pay you to be a thought partner for me on this? And it helped me tremendously because it got me out of my own head. It allowed me to not have pride in authorship, like I wrote this. It was like, this is a start. This is a draft. And I need input to help me get it to the next level. And if we take that mindset to our journey, our our leadership journey, who we are as humans. I have therapy this afternoon, right? Because
Right.
I'm seeking a thought partner or someone to bounce things off of, to stay out of my head, because my coach had taught me this a long time ago. It's about how can you shift perspective a little bit? But if you're looking at something and you only look at it this way, and that's your only source of input is yourself and in your own brain, you often need someone to help grab you by the shoulders, shift you
Right.
12 degrees, maybe even, and look at something a little bit differently. And I have to be willing to go, oh, that is fascinating. Or gosh, that taught me a lot. And sometimes you might get a piece of you shift your perspective a little bit and go, that's not for me either. Okay, we'll shift again. Do you see what I mean? So it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this is why I talk about it as a game. It's a sport. I am a willing participant in this every day. I'm suiting up. And so often that's my friend Chris Vasami posted something this morning on LinkedIn about that we have to, on the hard days, you got to get up to. On the hard Mondays, it's not just the good Mondays, right? It's those days when I was like, oh God, I got to go practice, right? You go to practice. You
Yep.
go to the gym. It's the same thing. You can't hide out. You can take rest when you need it. And that's important. You can get that thought partner, that coaching when you need it, and you keep going, right? The only
Right.
way forward, where you're going to actually move yourself forward, is what? Step by step. But these are things that I'm not a genius here, right? I'm not saying anything that a lot of other people haven't said. It's just my way of saying it and encouraging other people to have this dialogue. This is the kind of dialogue that I find fascinating. I find interesting. I get excited about my own growth, about the growth of others. And so I think the more we can have these kind of conversations and think this way, I think it's enriching.
No doubt. No doubt. So what about emerging leaders or athletes? So let's say, for example, you come out of the best business school, whether it's Harvard or Wharton School of Business, and let's say that you're a high school All-American going to play at Michigan. You're starting at the bottom, and you have to basically prove yourself. What do you expect of those young executive or athletes who aspire to become leadership athletes? What would you say is the training regimen, and how do they start building that intention, discipline, and commitment to continuous improvement?
So the first thing is, remember that you have proved yourself to yourself time and time again. Have those as reference points. Remember the foundational elements. Remember that what got you to practice every single day, what got you through the hard moments, those are in you. You didn't lose them, right? You've just shown up in a different arena. Now you're in a different arena. There are people who are more experienced. So with more experience, they have more moves. They have more perspective. They've proven themselves more times to themselves. And
Right.
so now, as long as you're able to call upon your foundation, you're going to do that too. And so it's about, you're not a know-it-all. You didn't just suddenly arrive and you're going to be the boss of everybody and be perfect. Nope. You're at it again every day. It's actually, the foundation isn't different. It is the perception that it's really interesting, right? Because you're on this high and you get to this point, you're a senior and you graduate and you're like, yeah. And then to your point, the very next day, you're like, oh shit, now I got to put on a business suit. Now I got to be, and I'm at the bottom. And I got these people telling me what to do and everything. And I don't have my coaching staff around me and all of that. And Well, what are you going to do? The same
Right.
thing you've done before. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to prove yourself to yourself. And you're going to like, what is the mental game tape you can watch? Or what do you observe? I think that's the other thing. Remember that part of how you prove yourself to yourself, part of how you got better is by observing, by listening, by being coachable. Those are just your foundational. At this point, I would imagine they're characteristics. They're just part of who you are. So do the same things.
Right.
It's like, and when others are better than you, okay, that's fine. Learn, right? So the only way you're going to get better is if you actually learn and observe and pick up tricks and whatever, and then you're going to get better. It's the same thing. So, again, I think people think it's an entirely different environment. And now what I'm going to do, just keep doing what you've been doing.
Right on. Right. That's kick-ass. Shauna, we're going to go into segment 4. I'm going to turn it back over to Aaron, which is the rapid fire round. Aaron, it's all yours.
Okay, Shauna, this is where I start the sentence and you finish it. So
Okay.
It's fun. Okay. Discipline equals.
Discipline equals. The first thing that came to me was awareness, self-awareness.
Leadership equals.
Commitment.
Faith equals.
Hope.
Legacy equals.
Impact.
What's one thing you would never compromise on?
My values.
And if you could put a best message on a billboard for the next generation of leaders and athletes, what would your message to them be?
Learn, grow, and evolve.
I love it. Okay, that's how fast it was. Good job.
Thank you. Caught me on the first one.
Usually gets somebody the first time. Okay, Thomas, it's back to you.
I had to unmute myself. Shauna, we're going to get into our closing segment, which is badass. And this is basically an opportunity to kind of open up the floor to you. But first, we want to put you in from the rapid fire to the hot seat. What are the top 3 sports movies, according to Shauna?
Oh, goodness. I don't even know what to say. Gosh, I wouldn't say they're the top 3 per se. But I will tell you that one that I just recently watched I was writing yesterday and I watched the story of Mike Tyson.
Okay.
I think that the quality of being able to just learn about the journey that someone has gone through and like decisions they made, I think they're great sources of information for us to draw upon. So I'll just say that one because I thought it was really interesting.
No doubt. This is kind of a common question that I ask a lot of our guests to just kind of close things out with a little fun. But, when you see these scripted movies, it's great. It's a feel good. But I think you're right. When you get to documentaries, right? When you start to watch a documentary on somebody, you go, wow, that's incredible. Because you learn something that you didn't know about them. Because we always see the highlights, but you never see the dark side or the hidden side of an athlete or executive person. So with that said, Shauna, before we wrap up, is there something we didn't touch on today that you feel like founders, executives, or emerging leaders or athletes need to hear about treating leadership like a sport and maximize their contribution?
I think that it's something that we didn't talk about. It's just more around sort of reaffirming reaffirming yourself in the process and people say like giving yourself grace in the process. I think that, I talked about learning, growing, involving. I talked about self-awareness. And at the same time, there's an element of like knowing that you're going to make mistakes along the way.
Right.
You're not perfect. And like, well, what do you do in those moments? And I think that, so I guess maybe we didn't really talk about this that much, but I think there's too many times that people try to mask or fake it because they're in a seat of leadership. So they have to look like they know what they're doing. Do you know how actually empowering it is for other people? Actually, if you say, I don't actually know, but we're going to learn together. We're
Right.
going to win together. I had a phenomenal leader in my journey. His name is Fred Mangione. The time I was in marketing at the New Jersey Nets, then now Brooklyn Nets. But he used to say to me, Shauna, we will get through anything together.
Yeah.
And he was much more experienced. He was, than I was. And that helped me so much because I didn't have to be panicking, thinking I have to be perfect, or if I make any mistake, I'm going to be fired or whatever. It taught me the art of bad news first. Share that. You don't mask it. Hey, this happened and I need your help in getting through it. Or, I'm the leader, but I said something and I was observed the reaction that you had, and I'm going to hold myself accountable for that. And I think that sense of empathy, that sense of accountability, I don't think it's really effective to expect your employees to be aware, communicative, transparent, vulnerable, all of those things, or to work on themselves if you're not. So again, it's about like, well, how are you acting? How are you handling challenging moments? It actually models for other people. So I think that's something really important. And it doesn't start once you get to a senior. You can never start this stuff too early. So, I think it doesn't, if someone's listening to this and they're a coach of junior high kids, take something away that you can help them to start learning it now.
Right.
And so then continue to do this, continue to model yourself after it. If you screw up, admit it, apologize, but don't just apologize with words that are hollow. Act, show them, operate differently, continue that. And that, if you hold yourself accountable in a transparent way, I think that has just, there's a ripple effect to it. So it kind of started out with, I don't know, but I think I landed on something that I find is really important. And thank you for the opportunity to share that.
No question. And last question, where can people connect with you and learn more about you, your work, and what you do, whether that's a website, your social media handles, or an email?
Yeah. Well, I'll say an email, always, you can reach me at Shauna, SHAUNA at slgimpact.com. And probably the easiest way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I am someone who does accept invitations, and as long as you're not trying to slap me in my DMs, I'm pretty open to conversation and getting to know people. And that's how I know you and Aaron. So, I do welcome people reaching out to me.
Awesome. There it is, team. Shauna Griffiths on LinkedIn, as well as her email. Thank you for showing us what leadership athletes looks like in action, both leaders and both executives as well as athletes. Team, if this conversation hit you, do two things for us. One, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. A founder navigating growth, an executive building high-performance teams, a leader ready to treat their craft like a sport, or athletes, families, and coaches. And two, connect with Shauna at Shauna, SHAUNA, at slgimpact.com. If you're navigating an inflection point, needs a strategic partner who understands what it takes to move from strategy to action with speed and focus, Shauna brings the athlete's mindset to business strategy. And if you're an athlete, parent, or coach ready to raise the standard, check us out at blueprintbluechip.com. We help athletes build identity, discipline, and legacy that goes far beyond the game. And if you're ready to get clear about who you are beyond the game, check us out at blueprintbluechip.com or reach out to Shauna. If this episode resonated with you, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps us reach more athletes, parents, and leaders who need this message. This is a Standard Podcast, and this movement only grows when we raise the standard together. Talent fades, but truth endures. Let's raise the bar, rebuild the culture, and become the standard. Aaron, Shauna, thank you so much, team. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.